Look at her, so beautiful. She's only 22, you know. The voice was a stage whisper, a venomous little secret meant for everyone to hear, sharp enough to cut through the polite murmur of my own wedding reception. I stood there in a white dress that felt like a costume, a stranger in my own life. And she's marrying him. A second voice chimed in, dripping with pity. A 65-year-old man who just had a stroke. What a waste. I heard she's only doing it for the money, to pay off her father's debts. Well, money talks, I guess. Must be nice to be that rich. You can just buy a young, pretty little thing to take care of you. Those were the whispers that haunted my wedding day. My name is Hannah. I was 22 years old, and I was marrying a man old enough to be my grandfather. A man I didn't love. A man whose touch made my skin crawl, and every single person in that room knew it. My life wasn't supposed to be this way. I was supposed to be normal. After high school, when my friends were going off to college, I took a job at the textile mill with my mom. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. The plan was simple. We work, we save, we survive. But plans don't account for a hole in the bottom of the bucket. And my father was that hole. He was an addict. For 5 years, he'd been chasing a high that cost us everything. It started small, then it grew. Anything of value in our small house vanished. The flat-screen TV my mom had saved for a year to buy, gone. Her jewelry box, empty. My laptop for night classes, sold for a fraction of its worth. I'll never forget the day I came home and the dining room was empty. The heavy oak dining set my mother had cherished, the one we ate every meal at, was gone. How he managed to haul that heavy thing out of the house by himself, I'll never know. The desperation of an addict is a force of nature. Our house became a hollow shell. We didn't even have a table to eat at anymore. My mom would just lay a mat on the floor in the living room, and we'd sit there, eating in silence. Not that we had guests anymore. No one came to visit, not even family. My father had burned every bridge, borrowing, begging, and eventually stealing from anyone who showed him a sliver of kindness. My own uncles and aunts would lock their doors when they saw him coming. We were an island, my mother and I, stranded by the storm he had created. Our lives became a relentless cycle of work and debt. I worked 14, sometimes 15 hours a day at the mill. I never took a Sunday off. My world had shrunk, its entire landscape paved with the single, desperate thought of money. Money to pay the loan sharks my father owed. Money to keep a roof over our heads. Money for food. I was so tired. I'd see girls my age, friends from high school, posting pictures on Instagram. They worked, sure, but their paychecks were their own. They bought new iPhones, drove decent cars, wore clothes that weren't threadbare. They went out for brunch on Sundays. Their lives seemed so light. Mine felt like I was trying to swim with stones tied to my ankles. For years, I rode a rusty old bicycle to work while they drove past in their sedans, rain or shine. I remember one morning, exhausted. I'd overslept. I pedaled so hard, my lungs burning, sweat pouring down my face, only to get to the mill late anyway. People wore nice shoes, stylish jeans. I was still wearing the same pair of cheap plastic sneakers I'd had for 2 years. I owned exactly 3 outfits that I rotated through the entire year, wearing them until the jeans were white and worn thin at the seams. Every month, I'd hand over my entire paycheck to my mom, nearly $1,000, and she'd give it straight to the collectors. I'd keep maybe $50 for myself, for bus fare or a coffee, but even that wasn't safe. My father would find it, and if I said no, if I dared to say no, I learned that lesson the hard way. One time, I'd saved up $60. He asked for it. I refused. He picked up a heavy glass ashtray from the coffee table, one of the few things he hadn't sold, and threw it at my face. It caught me right beside my eye. The bruise was a deep, ugly purple that bloomed across my cheekbone and stayed there for a month. I learned to just give him the money after that. It was less painful. Have you ever felt so poor that you had to borrow money just to see your friends? I have. When my best friend from high school got married, I had to ask one of the older women at the mill to lend me $20 for a gift. I didn't even have a decent dress to wear. The shame. It felt like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. At the wedding, I could feel the other girls looking at me, at my cheap, worn-out dress. I could hear their whispers. I started to hate my life. Truly, deeply hate it. I told my mom I was going to leave. Just pack a bag and move to a different city, a different state, anywhere but here. I couldn't take it anymore. But she just cried. She sobbed in a way that broke my heart, begging me not to leave her alone. How could I? She couldn't carry that weight by herself. So I stayed. Then, late last year, the inevitable happened. My father was arrested for possession. He was sent to prison. For the first time in years, there was no shouting in the house, no fear, but the silence was quickly filled by a different kind of noise. The pounding on our door, the loan sharks. The debts were still there, and now they wanted all of it. Right now, they told us if we didn't pay, they'd take the house. The number was impossibly large. It was a mountain we could never hope to climb. A week later, I came home from work to find my mom unconscious on her bedroom floor, an empty bottle of pills beside her. The note said she was sorry. By some miracle, I found her in time. A neighbor helped me get her to the hospital. They saved her. But when she came home, something inside her had broken. She was fragile, weak. She couldn't go back to the mill. And just like that, the entire mountain was on my shoulders. The debt collectors started getting aggressive, banging on the windows at night, spray painting threats on our front door. My mom was sick, I was alone, and I was drowning. I had no idea how we were going to survive. And then, one evening, Mrs. Gable came knocking. She was from the next street over, a notorious town gossip who somehow knew everyone's business. We were sitting in the near dark, eating canned soup, the door already locked because we were terrified of the collectors. "Hannah, honey, are you and your mother in there?" Her voice called from the porch. I peeked through the blinds. "It's Mrs. Gable, Mom," I whispered. Should I just stay quiet? My mother sighed, her face pale and weary. "No, let her in. Maybe it's important." I unlocked the door. "Hi, Mrs. Gable." "Goodness, child, why are you two holed up like this? It's not even 8 o'clock. Just tired, that's all. Where's your mother?" "In here. Please, come in." She stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanning the barren living room. Her gaze lingered on the empty space where our dining table used to be. She clicked her tongue. "Oh, you poor dears. It's just so hard for you two, isn't it? Not even a proper table to sit at." My mom just looked down at her hands. "My husband, he sold everything before he left." "Well, at least he's gone now," Mrs. Gable said, with a shocking lack of tact. "He was just dragging you both down. He also left us with a mountain of debt," my mom said, her voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Gable nodded, her face a mask of practiced sympathy. "I know, dear. It's a terrible shame. But what if I told you there was a way to pay it all off?" My mom looked up, a flicker of something hope, suspicion in her eyes. "How, Carol? The debt is in the 6 figures. It might as well be $1 million. We'll be paying it off until the day we die." Mrs. Gable took a sip of the water I'd given her and set the glass down deliberately. "I was over at Arthur Sterling's place today. He asked me to come talk to you." Mr. Sterling, the richest man in 3 counties. What could he possibly want with us? Did my husband owe him money, too? I asked, my stomach twisting. "Oh no, nothing like that, dear. You know Mr. Sterling, of course. His wife passed." "What?" 5 years ago now. And then he had that bad stroke last year. He's better, but he's frail. He needs someone, a companion, someone to take care of him." She paused, looking directly at me. Her eyes were sharp, like a bird's. "He was at his granddaughter Chloe's wedding a few months back. You were there, weren't you, Hannah?" I nodded numbly. Chloe and I had been in the same class in high school. I'd gone to her wedding. I remembered seeing her grandfather there, sitting in a wheelchair, looking old and tired. "Well," Mrs. Gable continued, "he saw you, and he took a shine to you. He told me, 'Carol, find that girl.' He said if you agree to marry him, Hannah, he'll pay off every last cent of your family's debt. He's a wealthy man. You know that. This would all just go away." The room went silent. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I felt dizzy, like the floor was tilting beneath me. Marry Mr. Sterling. He was 65. He was Chloe's grandfather. The thought was grotesque. My mother found her voice first. "No, absolutely not. Thank you for the offer, Carol. But no, Hannah is 22. She's just a child. She can't marry a man that age." "But think of it, dear," Mrs. Gable pressed, her voice becoming slick, persuasive. "The debt would be gone. You'd live in that big, beautiful house. You'd never have to worry about money again. Just think about it. He's old and sick," my mom shot back. "She'd be his nursemaid, not his wife." "I won't have it." Mrs. Gable leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "And you don't think that's the point? Be realistic. The man had a major stroke. He isn't going to live forever. A few years, maybe. A few years of inconvenience. And then he's gone. And his fortune, it goes to his wife. By the time he passes, Hannah will still be a young woman. A very, very wealthy young woman. She could do anything she wanted." My mother was shaking her head, tears in her eyes. "No, but I was listening. I was imagining a life without the constant, crushing weight of debt. A life where my mom didn't have to be afraid. A life where I didn't have to work 15 hours a day just to fall further behind." "Mom," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "let me talk to him. Just let me meet him. Then I'll decide." "Hannah, no. He's 65. He's sick. What's the difference between being his nurse and being a slave at the mill?" I asked, the bitterness I'd been swallowing for years finally spilling out. "At least this way, we get paid. Let me just talk to him, Mom. Please." I told Mrs. Gable to pass the message along, that I would come to his house tomorrow evening. As she was leaving, she pressed a thick envelope into my hand. "Mr. Sterling sent this for you. A little something to help you out in the meantime." Inside was $2,000 in cash. After she left, my mother turned on me. "Hannah, what is wrong with you? He's the age of your own grandfather. How could you even consider this?" I looked at her, at the deep lines of worry etched around her eyes, at her frail hands, and I felt a cold resolve settle over me. "I want the debt to be gone," I said, my voice flat. "I want to have money. It's about the money, Mom. It's only ever been about the money." The next evening, I stood before the gates of Arthur Sterling's estate. It wasn't a house. It was a landmark, a sprawling stone mansion set back on a perfectly manicured lawn, separated from the rest of our shabby town by a long, winding driveway and an imposing iron gate. I'd ridden my bike past this place 1,000 times. and it always felt like looking at a different planet. I pressed the button on the intercom. A moment later, a voice crackled through the speaker. Yes, it was Chloe. My heart sank. It's Hannah. I'm here to see Mr. Sterling. There was a long pause. I could practically hear her frown. Then, a sharp buzz, and the heavy gate swung slowly inward. Chloe was waiting for me at the front door. She was dressed in yoga pants and an expensive-looking sweatshirt, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. She looked at my worn jeans and faded t-shirt with an expression that was halfway between pity and disgust. "Hannah," she said, her tone cool. "What are you doing here? Did you get lost? Your grandfather invited me." "My grandfather? Why? It's private." She smirked. "Right. Well, come on in. Don't want to let the bugs in." She led me into a grand foyer with gleaming marble floors and a staircase that looked like something out of a movie. The air smelled of lemon polish and old money. Arthur Sterling was sitting in a high-backed armchair in the living room, a thick book resting in his lap. He looked even older and more fragile up close. The skin on his face was thin and papery, mapped with wrinkles. When he smiled, it looked like a painful effort. Chloe announced my presence with a theatrical sigh. "Grandpa, your guest is here." "Ah, Hannah." "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice a dry rustle. "Chloe, dear, would you mind giving us some privacy?" Chloe's eyes widened. "Privacy? Grandpa, what is this about?" "It's a private matter. Please, run along now." She shot me a look of pure venom before turning and stalking up the grand staircase. Mr. Sterling gestured to the plush sofa opposite him. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Tea? Water?" "No, thank you, sir. I'm fine." "Please," he said, with that strained smile. "Call me Arthur." The sound of his first name on my own lips felt wrong, like a lie, but I nodded anyway. "Arthur." He stared at me for a long moment, his gaze unnervingly intense. It wasn't the kind look of an old man. It was an appraising look. He was examining me, from my face down to my worn-out sneakers. I felt my skin prickle. His eyes kept flicking down to my chest. "I won't beat around the bush, Hannah," he began, finally breaking the silence. "Mrs. Gable explained my proposition to you." "She did. And what are your thoughts?" I took a deep breath. This was it. This was the negotiation for my life. "Before I can have any thoughts," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I need to understand the terms." Clearly, he seemed amused. "Of course. Very practical. I like that. Your family is in some financial trouble. I understand. Tell me, how much is the total debt?" It's over $100,000. The number tasted like ash in my mouth. "I see." He didn't even blink. "Here is my offer. If you agree to be my wife, I will give you $200,000. Immediately. 100 to clear the debt, and another 100 for you and your mother. To repair your home, to live comfortably." He leaned forward slightly. "And once you are my wife, everything that is mine becomes ours." A husband provides for his wife, after all. My mind was reeling. $200,000. It was more money than I could even comprehend. But I thought of what Mrs. Gable had said. He isn't going to live forever. I had to ask. The question felt ghoulish, predatory, but I had to know. "And what about your children? Your family? Will they accept this?" "My decisions are my own. They have been well provided for. If you agree to this, my lawyers will draft a prenuptial agreement. It will stipulate that upon my death, a significant portion of my estate will be yours. You will be taken care of for the rest of your life, Hannah. I give you my word." He reached out and took my hand. His skin was dry and cool, his grip surprisingly strong, and it took everything in me not to recoil. You won't have to worry about a thing. All I ask for is your companionship, your youth, your warmth. As he spoke, he began to stroke the back of my hand with his thumb, a slow, possessive gesture that made my stomach turn. I felt like a piece of property he was inspecting before the final purchase. But I thought of my mother's face, the fear in her eyes. I thought of the endless shifts at the mill, my body aching with exhaustion. Then he did something that made me want to vomit. He lifted my hand to his lips and pressed a dry, chapped kiss to my knuckles. His breath smelled faintly of medicine and decay. "So, what do you say, my dear?" Just then, Chloe's voice cut through the air like a shard of glass. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She was standing at the bottom of the stairs, her face a mask of fury. She had obviously been listening the whole time. Arthur dropped my hand, startled. "Chloe, I told you to give us privacy." "Privacy to do what?" "Seduce a girl younger than I am." "Are you disgusting?" She spat, her voice shaking with rage. "Is that what you are now? A dirty old man buying little girls?" Arthur's face flushed a dark mottled red. "That is enough, Chloe. This is a private conversation between two adults. It does not concern you." "Doesn't concern me?" she shrieked, taking a step towards me. "You bring this gold digger into my home, and you say it doesn't concern me? Look at her. She's here for your money, Grandpa. Can't you see that?" Her eyes, the same pale blue as her grandfather's, bored into me. "Is this what you do, Hannah? Prey on the sick and the elderly?" I just sat there, frozen. Her words were a physical blow, landing exactly where I was most vulnerable, because, in a way, she was right. "From now on," Arthur said, his voice low and dangerous, "you will refer to Hannah as what she is about to become. You will call her your grandmother." Chloe looked like he had slapped her. She let out a laugh that was half scream, half sob. "Grandmother? Are you insane? She's my age. We went to high school together. I don't care if you were womb mates," he snarled. "This is my house, and she will be my wife. If you cannot show her the proper respect, you and that layabout husband of yours are welcome to find somewhere else to live. Do you understand me?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Chloe's face crumpled. She knew she had lost. She glared at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was terrifying. It was a promise of war. Without another word, she turned and stormed up the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing like gunshots in the cavernous hall. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Arthur sighed, a long, weary sound. He reached for my hand again. "Don't mind her. She's just a spoiled child." I pulled my hand away. "I have to go." "Wait, Hannah. Don't leave like this." I stood up, backing away towards the door. "I need to think." "Of course. Of course," he said, trying to stand, his movements slow and clumsy as he reached for the cane, leaning against his chair. He started to hobble after me. "Stay for a while longer. We can talk." But I was already at the door, fumbling with the heavy brass handle. I didn't look back. I fled from that house like it was on fire, his reedy voice calling my name behind me, weaker and weaker with every step I took away from him. I didn't ride my bike. I just walked, my feet carrying me aimlessly along the dark country roads that bordered the river. The cool night air was a relief after the stuffy, perfumed atmosphere of that house. The moon was out, casting a silver path on the water. I just needed to breathe. "Hannah, that you?" A figure emerged from the shadows ahead. It was Liam. He lived a few houses down from us, a quiet, kind guy who was a couple of years older than me. He was handsome in that effortless, all-American way, with broad shoulders and a shy smile. He was standing next to his old motorcycle, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Oh, hey Liam, you okay? You're out walking late. Just needed some air," I mumbled. "Yeah, it's a good night for it." He looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You want some company? You're busy," I said, gesturing to the bike. "Nah, it can wait." Without a second thought, he kicked the stand down and started walking beside me, pushing the heavy bike along with one hand. "Where are you headed?" "Nowhere, really." And so we walked. He didn't press me for details. He just walked with me, a steady, comforting presence in the quiet of the night. He was the only person in town who had never looked at me with pity. When my father was at his worst, when I would run out of the house in tears after another one of his rages, I'd often find myself on Liam's porch. He'd just sit with me, not saying much, maybe bringing me a glass of water or a cookie, until I was ready to go home. He was decent, a truly decent person. He walked me all the way to my gate. The streetlights cast long shadows on the cracked pavement. "Well," he said, stopping, "here you are. Thanks for the walk, Liam. Anytime." He hesitated for a moment, then reached into the saddlebag of his motorcycle and pulled out a small, neatly folded paper bag. "Here, this is for you." "What is it?" "Just open it later," he said, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. "It's nothing, really." "Thank you," I said, taking the bag. Our fingers brushed, and a little jolt, something warm and real, shot up my arm. He gave me a small, hopeful smile, then swung his leg over his bike and roared off into the night. I went inside. My mom was waiting for me in the living room, her face etched with worry. "You were gone so long. Did you decide?" I looked at the worn-out floor, at the peeling paint on the walls, at my mother's tired face. I clutched the paper bag from Liam like a lifeline. "Yes," I said, my voice hollow. "I'm going to marry him." Her face fell. "Hannah, no, please. We'll find another way." "There is no other way, Mom," I snapped, the frustration and despair of the night boiling over. "There is no other way. But what about your life? Your happiness? What about Liam? He's a good boy, Hannah. He truly cares about you." My heart clenched. "Liam can't give us $200,000. Can he, Mom? Will marrying him stop the collectors from taking this house? Will it let you see a doctor? We can't live on good. We need money." She started to cry softly, a defeated sound that tore me apart. I couldn't stand it. I turned and ran to my room, slamming the door behind me. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking. I opened the bag from Liam. Inside were 2 new blouses, one white and one a soft shade of pink. They were simple but beautiful. At the bottom of the bag was a small, folded piece of notepaper. I opened it. His handwriting was a little messy, straightforward and honest, just like him. "Hannah, I'm not good with words, but I wanted you to know that I like you. I've liked you for a long time. I want to be the one who takes care of you, if you'll let me." "Liam," I read the note once, then twice, and then the dam broke. I pressed the note to my chest and I sobbed. I cried for the simple, beautiful life I was giving up. I cried for the decent, kind man I could never have. I cried for the girl I used to be, and for the woman I was about to become. I cried because I was trading my heart for a handful of cash, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was a bargain I would regret for the rest of my life. The next morning, I put the 2 blouses back into the paper bag, folding them neatly. I left Liam's note on my nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I couldn't bear to return it to him either. I walked over to his house, my feet feeling like lead. He was in his garage, working on his motorcycle, a smudge of grease on his cheek. He looked up when I approached, a hopeful, boyish grin spreading across his face. The grin vanished when he saw the paper bag in my hand. "Hannah," he said, his voice soft. I held the bag out to him. "I can't accept this." He wiped his hands on a rag, his eyes full of a confusion that broke my heart. If you don't feel the same way, that's okay," he stammered. "I get it, but please, just keep the gift. I bought them for you. No one else should wear them." I let out a long, slow breath, steeling myself for what I had to do next. "Okay," I said, my voice cold and distant. "I'll keep them. But there's something you need to know." He waited, his expression guarded. "I'm getting married." The words hit him like a physical blow. I watched the light go out of his eyes. "You're what? Married? To who?" "It doesn't matter who. What matters is that he can give me what I need." "What you need?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What about what you want?" "I need to pay off my family's debts, Liam. That's what I need." He stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "I have money. I've been saving. Let me help you." I almost laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "How much have you saved, Liam? How much money do you have?" I have about $8,000, he said, the number sounding small and pathetic, even to my own ears. "And I'll sell the bike, and anything else of value. I'll get a second job. We can figure it out, Hannah. Please, just don't do this." $8,000. It was everything to him, and it was nothing to me. It was a single drop in an ocean of debt. "Your entire life savings wouldn't even cover a tenth of it," I said, my voice sharp with a cruelty I didn't know I possessed. "And then what? We sell everything we own, we get married, and then we do what? Live on air. The collectors will still come, Liam. They'll take the house, and we'll have nothing." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm marrying a rich man. I'm doing it to save my mother, and to save myself from this miserable, poor life. I hope you can understand that." He just stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes red. He didn't know that every cold, practical word I said was a dagger twisting in my own gut. Is he the man from the big house on the hill?" he asked quietly. "Mr. Sterling?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. "But he's old, Hannah. He's sick." "The sicker the better," I said, the words tasting like poison. "Maybe he'll die sooner." I turned and walked away, not allowing myself to look back. As I walked, I could feel his eyes on me, and I knew with absolute certainty that he couldn't see the tears streaming down my own face. A love story between two poor kids. What a beautiful, foolish dream. In the real world, dreams don't pay the bills. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a mirror in a cloud of white silk and lace. I was a bride. The wedding was a small, quiet affair at Arthur's estate, a grotesque parody of a real celebration. The groom leaned on a cane as he waited for me at the makeshift altar in his garden. He beamed at me, a proud, possessive smile on his face. The bride, a girl of 22 with the face of an angel and the eyes of a ghost, walked towards him. Her smile never reached her eyes. The whispers followed me down the aisle, the same whispers from the reception. "What a waste. For the money. She's just a child." I heard them all, and I felt nothing. I was a doll, beautifully dressed, moving my limbs when I was told to. I said I do when I was prompted. I let him slide a heavy diamond ring onto my finger. I let him kiss me, his lips dry and papery against mine. Later that evening, after the few guests had departed, Arthur was in high spirits. He'd had a few glasses of champagne, and his face was flushed. His brother clapped him on the shoulder as he prepared to head upstairs. "You take it easy on that young bride of yours, Art," he joked. Arthur just winked, a lewd gesture that made me feel ill. Don't you worry about me, he slurred, puffing out his chest. Still plenty of fire in this old engine. He waved them off and turned towards the grand staircase, where I was waiting as instructed. He took his first step, leaning heavily on his cane, but his legs, already weakened by the stroke and now clumsy with alcohol, betrayed him. He staggered, his hand flailing for the banister. He missed. There was a sickening, heavy thud, followed by a series of smaller bumps as he tumbled down half a dozen carpeted stairs. He landed in a heap at the bottom, groaning, blood trickling from his mouth. 2 of his front teeth, part of a dental bridge, I'd later learn, were lying on the pristine white marble floor. His family rushed him to the hospital. I, his new bride, simply went to our bedroom, closed the door, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep on top of the covers, still in my wedding dress. I was just so tired. I woke up around 10. The house was dead silent. Arthur wasn't there. I got up, my body stiff, and went downstairs. The house was empty. The lights were off in the living room, but a faint glow emanated from the television. Chloe's husband, Nate, was passed out on the sofa, his mouth hanging open, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the floor beside him. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. I was turning to go back upstairs when he stirred. He blinked his eyes open, saw me, and a slow, sleazy grin spread across his face. Well, he said, his voice thick with sleep and alcohol. Hello, Grandma. He sat up, swinging his legs onto the floor. You're looking mighty fine tonight. That old man of yours sure is a lucky bastard. If he can still get it up, that is. His words were like slime. I ignored him and started walking away. That's not very respectful, Nate. Respect? He laughed, getting to his feet and following me. Honey, you're the last person in this house to be talking about respect. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the stairs. The reek of whiskey rolled off him in waves. You know, if you ever get lonely, if the old man can't perform, you just let me know. I'd be happy to help you out. Get out of my way, I said, my voice low and shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. He reached out and grabbed my arm. Hey, where are you going? The party's just getting started. Let go of me, I hissed, trying to pull away. What are you two doing? Chloe's voice cut through the tension like a whip. She was standing in the doorway, her purse in one hand, her car keys in the other. Her eyes, narrowed and suspicious, darted between her husband's hand on my arm and my furious face. Nate dropped my arm like it was hot. Honey, you're back. I was just welcoming our new family member. It looked like a lot more than welcoming to me, she said, her gaze fixed on me. What were you doing, Hannah? Throwing yourself at my husband the minute you've got my grandfather out of the house? What? No, I sputtered. He was the one. Oh, save it, she sneered, walking towards me. I know your type. You think because you married a rich old man, everything in this house is yours for the taking, including my husband. You're insane, I said, finding my footing. The fear was receding, replaced by a hot, white anger. And for the record, I'm your grandmother now. You should watch how you talk to me. She stopped dead, her face contorting with rage. Don't you ever say that to me. You are nothing. You are a cheap little tramp who tricked my grandfather. He's the one who came to me. I shot back. He's the one who offered me money to fix the mess my family was in. Do you have any idea what that's like, Chloe? To be so desperate you'd do anything? Of course you don't. You've had everything handed to you on a silver platter your entire life. So you admit it. You're just here for the money. Yes, I shouted, the word echoing in the huge silent foyer. Yes, I am. Everything has a price, Chloe, and the price for my youth was $200,000 and a lifetime of security. Your grandfather was happy to pay it. So, I suggest you get used to the idea. You are a snake, she whispered, her voice trembling, and I am going to make your life a living hell. Get in line, I said, my voice dripping with a weariness that went bone deep. It's already a living hell. I pushed past her and walked up the stairs, leaving her standing there with her drunk, useless husband. I went into the master bedroom, my bedroom, now, and locked the door. I finally took off the wedding dress, letting it fall in a heap on the floor. I looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. She was a fighter. She was a survivor. And she was utterly, completely alone in a house full of enemies. As I was about to get into bed, a thought struck me. Arthur, I'd completely forgotten about him. Where was he? What had happened? The guilt was a dull, distant ache. I was his wife now. I was supposed to be the one to care for him. Sighing, I unlocked my door and went back downstairs. I could hear Chloe and Nate arguing in their room, their voices rising and falling in a familiar rhythm of accusation and denial. I knocked on their door. The arguing stopped. After a moment, Chloe opened the door a crack, her eyes red and puffy. What do you want? Where's Arthur? She looked at me, confused, as if she had forgotten about him too. Oh, he's at the hospital. He's fine. Just a mild concussion and a couple of broken teeth. They're keeping him for a few days for observation. She gave me a bitter smile. I was on my way back to tell you, but I got distracted. You should probably go see him. Play the part of the loving, worried wife. The sarcasm in her voice was thick enough to choke on. Fine, I said. I went back to my room, threw on a pair of jeans, grabbed my purse, and called a cab. My wedding night, and I was spending it in a hospital waiting room. It was almost poetic. When I walked into his private room, the first thing the young, handsome doctor said was, "Oh, good. His granddaughter is here." Arthur, lying in the hospital bed with a bandage on his head and a swollen lip, turned purple with indignation. "She's my wife," he rasped, the words muffled by the gauze in his mouth. The doctor's eyes widened in comical surprise. He looked from me to the old man in the bed and back again. "Oh, I see. My apologies, ma'am." He couldn't get out of the room fast enough. I sat down in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" I asked, my voice flat. He reached for my hand, his grip weak. "Better, now that you're here. I'm sorry about this, my dear." Not exactly the romantic wedding night I had planned. I just nodded. "You should rest." Yes, you too. You must be exhausted." I spent 3 days playing the dutiful wife, sitting by his bedside, fetching him water, and enduring the curious, pitying stares of the nurses. Every time someone asked, "Are you here to see your grandfather?" Arthur would puff up like an angry toad and correct them, while I would just offer a tight, meaningless smile. When he was finally discharged, the first thing he did was give me the money. He wrote a check to my mother for the debt, and another check to me for $100,000, just as he'd promised. I drove to my mother's house, the checks feeling heavy and dangerous in my purse. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, staring into a cup of cold tea. I placed the checks in front of her. She looked at them, then at me. There were no tears of joy, no sighs of relief. Her face was just sad. "I feel like I sold you, Hannah," she whispered. I forced a laugh. "You think I'm only worth $200,000, Mom? Please. I'm aiming for at least 20 million before this is all over." "Don't talk like that," she said, her voice sharp with pain. "I don't want 20 million. I just want you to be happy. I'm so worried they'll mistreat you over there." Don't worry about me, I said, my voice hardening. I can handle them. I stayed for a while, telling her I was fine, that everything was going to be okay. Before I left, I glanced across the street towards Liam's house. His motorcycle was gone. The windows were dark. Is Liam around? I asked, trying to sound casual. He left for a job out of state, my mother said quietly. The day after your wedding. He was heartbroken, Hannah. The news was a punch to the gut. Of course he'd left. What was there for him here? I had made sure of that. Well, I said, my voice brittle. I hope he's doing well. I got in the car, my new car, a sleek silver sedan Arthur had bought me, and drove away, leaving behind the only person who had ever truly loved me, and the only man I might have ever truly loved in return. That night, the inevitable happened. Arthur was feeling better, emboldened by a cocktail of painkillers and ego. He waited for me in our bed, his eyes gleaming with a kind of pathetic eagerness. I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. This was part of the deal. I was an employee, and this was in the job description. I took a long, hot shower, and when I came out, wrapped in a towel, he was patting the space beside him. Come here, my love. I lay down, my body rigid, and stared at a crack in the ceiling as he fumbled with his pajama buttons. His hands were shaky from the after effects of the stroke, his movements clumsy. He pawed at my towel, pulling it away, his eyes roaming over my body with a hunger that felt ancient and wrong. He leaned in to kiss me, and the medicinal scent of him filled my nostrils. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to transport myself somewhere else, anywhere else. I tried to imagine it was Liam's hands on me, Liam's lips, but it was no use. The reality was too grotesque. But then, nothing happened. After a few minutes of pathetic, wheezing effort, he collapsed onto the pillows, breathing heavily. He was impotent. The relief that washed over me was so profound it almost made me laugh. He was a toothless old lion, capable only of roaring. From that day on, my life changed. I had everything I had ever dreamed of, and more. Arthur, embarrassed by his failure, compensated by showering me with money. He gave me the password to his safe, the pins for his credit cards. Buy yourself something pretty, my dear, he'd say, avoiding my eyes. And I did. I learned to drive. I bought clothes, shoes, handbags. I got my hair done, had weekly facials. The calluses on my hands from the mill softened. The haunted, tired look in my eyes was replaced by a polished, confident sheen. The transformation was startling. Money, it turned out, was the best cosmetic in the world. Chloe watched my metamorphosis with undisguised loathing. She and Nate still lived in the house, a constant, simmering source of tension. Arthur gave them a generous allowance, but it was nothing compared to the blank check he had given me. She saw the new car, the designer labels, the casual way I would spend $1,000 on a shopping trip, and it ate away at her like acid. One afternoon, she cornered me in the kitchen. You know, you could at least pretend to be frugal, she said, her voice tight with resentment. It's not your money, you know. You didn't earn it. It's my husband's money, I replied calmly, sipping my iced coffee, which, last I checked, makes it my money. Or, are you jealous, Chloe? Is your allowance not cutting it? Her face flushed. I am not jealous of you. I'm disgusted. You're bleeding him dry. That evening, she went to Arthur. Grandpa, you need to cut her off, I heard her say from the living room. She spent $500 on a pair of shoes today. It's insane. Meanwhile, you won't even give me the $50,000 I need for the down payment on a house. Hannah is my wife, Arthur said, his voice firm. What she spends is her business. And as for you, you and your husband both have jobs. If you want a house, perhaps you should consider saving your money. instead of spending it on frivolous vacations. Frivolous? It was our anniversary, but she can buy whatever she wants, whenever she wants. This isn't fair. I'm your granddaughter. She's just a parasite. That's enough, Arthur roared, a rare flash of his old authority. I will not hear another disrespectful word about my wife. If I do, I'll cut your allowance in half. Do you hear me? I was standing at the top of the stairs, listening to it all. I knew she hated me. I knew she wanted me gone, but I had underestimated the depth of her resentment and the weakness of her position. I had Arthur wrapped around my little finger. I walked down the stairs, a serene smile on my face. "Good morning, everyone," I chirped, as if I hadn't heard a thing. Arthur's face immediately softened. "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well?" He patted the sofa next to him. "Come, sit with me." Chloe just glared, her jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. "I'm feeling a bit peckish," I said to Arthur. "I'm craving some of that amazing pho from the Vietnamese place downtown." "Of course, my dear. I'll have the housekeeper go and get some for us right away." He hobbled out of the room to give the instruction. The moment he was gone, Chloe turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" "I don't have to think it," I replied, examining my perfectly manicured nails. "I know it. You tried to turn him against me, and you failed. Maybe you should try being nicer to me. I have a lot of influence with your grandfather, you know. I could probably convince him to increase your allowance, or cut it off completely." You bitch," she hissed, taking a step towards me. I said, wagging a finger at her. Name-calling is so unbecoming, especially when you're begging for scraps from the person you're insulting. That was it. She snapped. She lunged at me, her hand raised to slap me, but I was ready for her. I was faster. I slapped her first, a sharp, cracking sound that echoed through the silent house. "Don't you ever," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "put your hands on me." She stared at me, stunned, her hand flying to her reddening cheek. "You hit me," she whispered in disbelief. Then she came at me again, claws out. I sidestepped her clumsy attack and, using her own momentum against her, shoved her hard. She stumbled backwards, tripping over a ridiculously expensive Persian rug, and went down in a heap, just as Arthur came hobbling back into the room. "What in God's name is going on in here?" he demanded. Chloe immediately burst into tears, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Grandpa, she attacked me. She hit me for no reason." Arthur looked from her, a sniveling mess on the floor, to me, standing there, calm and composed. He sighed, a look of profound disappointment on his face, but it wasn't directed at me. "Chloe," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "What did you say to her this time?" "She called me a bitch, Arthur," I said, my voice trembling with expertly feigned hurt. "She said I was a parasite and a gold digger. I couldn't take it anymore. I know I shouldn't have hit her, and I'm so sorry. If you want me to leave, I'll understand." I let a single, perfect tear roll down my cheek. Arthur's face hardened as he looked at his granddaughter. "Is this true, Chloe? Did you say those things to my wife?" Chloe, still on the floor, could only sputter, but she started it. She was mocking me. "I have warned you, time and again, to treat Hannah with respect," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You have left me no choice." He turned to me, his expression softening. "My dear, you did nothing wrong. You were provoked. Go upstairs and rest. I will handle this." I gave Chloe a final, triumphant glance over my shoulder as I glided up the stairs. From the landing, I could hear Arthur laying into her. "Pack your bags, Chloe, both of you. I want you out of this house by the end of the day." The sounds of her protests, her sobbing, and eventually, the slamming of doors were music to my ears. I had won. I had cut the head off the snake. The house was finally mine. With Chloe and Nate gone, a strange, quiet peace settled over the mansion. But peace, I was learning, was just another word for boredom. My days were a monotonous cycle of shopping, spa treatments, and lunches at expensive restaurants where I sat alone. At night, I would lie next to Arthur's snoring, wheezing form and feel a profound, soul-crushing emptiness. I had money, I had security, but I had no one to talk to, no one to laugh with. I was a prisoner in a gilded cage. I began to drink. It started with a glass of wine, with dinner, then two. Soon, I was making nightly trips to the well-stocked bar in Arthur's study. I discovered the warm, numbing embrace of expensive scotch. The more I drank, the more reckless I became. I started going out to bars by myself, seeking the anonymous company of strangers. I was a beautiful, well-dressed woman with a black Amex card. Men flocked to me. I fell into a pattern of meaningless one-night stands. It was a game. Could I get that handsome lawyer to buy me a drink? Could I get that arrogant stockbroker to leave with me? It was about power. It was about feeling something, anything, other than the hollow ache in my chest. I would stumble home in the early hours of the morning, reeking of cheap perfume and someone else's cologne, and crawl into bed beside my sleeping husband, who never suspected a thing. One night, I came home particularly late, fumbling with my keys at the front door. I was drunker than usual. A particularly charming musician at the bar had kept my glass full all night. Suddenly, the door swung open. It was Chloe's husband, Nate. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said, leaning against the doorframe. He was sober, his eyes clear and watchful. "What are you doing here?" I slurred. "Chloe forgot some things. I came to pick them up." His eyes roamed over my disheveled appearance. "Rough night. The best," I said with a smirk, pushing past him into the foyer. He followed me. "You know, Arthur's been asking about you. He worries when you're out so late." "Let him worry," I mumbled, kicking off my heels. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You know, Chloe and we're not doing so great since we moved out." "That sounds like a you problem," I said, turning to face him. He was very close now, too close. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers brushing against my skin. "I miss this house," he said softly. "I miss the quiet, the alcohol, the loneliness, the sheer, mind-numbing boredom of my life." It all coalesced into a single, reckless impulse. I looked at him, at his handsome, weak face, and I saw a new game to play. "Poor Nate," I purred, running a finger down the front of his shirt. "You look so tense." I let my hand drift lower, pausing just above his belt buckle. "Maybe I could help you relax." His eyes widened, a flicker of fear warring with a baser, more powerful desire. He swallowed hard. "Hannah, what are you doing?" "Shh," I whispered, pressing my body against his. I leaned in and kissed him, a long, slow, deliberate kiss. It was a kiss of pure, calculated destruction. He was weak, and I was a predator. He melted into my arms. "Not here," he breathed. When I finally pulled away, "Your room." "Is he asleep?" "Sound asleep," I lied. Arthur was a heavy sleeper, but he wasn't deaf. I had a better idea. "The 4th floor," I whispered. "The old storage rooms. No one ever goes up there." A thrill shot through me, the thrill of the forbidden, the dangerous. We crept up the stairs like thieves, our footsteps silent on the thick carpet. The fourth floor was dusty and filled with furniture draped in white sheets, like a graveyard of forgotten things. In the pale moonlight filtering through the dormer windows, we fell upon each other. It was frantic and ugly and completely meaningless, and for a few fleeting moments, it made me feel alive. As I was sneaking back to my room an hour later, my bedroom door opened. Arthur was standing there, leaning on his cane, his face a mask of confusion and worry. "Hannah, where have you been? I woke up and you were gone." My blood ran cold. I plastered a sleepy smile on my face. "Oh, I was just so thirsty." I went downstairs to get some water. He seemed to accept it. "Well, come back to bed. My legs are aching tonight." The damp weather. I helped him back into bed, my heart pounding in my chest. I had gotten away with it. The sheer, exhilarating audacity of it. The game was getting more interesting. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Chloe in the kitchen. She had apparently come back for another carload of her things. "Making breakfast?" I asked, pulling a bottle of orange juice from the fridge. She shot me a venomous look. "The housekeeper is off today. I'm making something for Grandpa. Don't worry, I didn't make any for you." "Good," I said. "I wouldn't want to be poisoned." I watched as she ladled a fragrant, steaming bowl of beef noodle soup for Arthur and set it on the counter. Then she made a bowl for herself and sat down at the kitchen island, pointedly ignoring me as she began to eat. This is so good," she said to no one in particular. "My cooking is just getting better and better." An idea, wicked and instantaneous, sparked in my mind. She wanted to play games. "Fine, let's play." I walked up behind her. "You know, Chloe," I said, my voice dangerously sweet. "You're right. It smells delicious." And with one swift, fluid motion, I grabbed the back of her head and shoved her face down into the bowl of boiling hot soup. She screamed, a raw, animal sound of shock and agony. She thrashed wildly, splashing the fiery broth all over the table and her own lap. She jumped up, clawing at her face, which was already turning an angry, scalded red. "You crazy bitch," she shrieked, tears of pain streaming from her eyes. "What is wrong with you?" I grabbed a handful of her hair, yanking her head back. "You made this delicious soup, Chloe. The least you can do is finish it." I dragged her over to the puddle of spilled soup on the table and tried to force her face into it. Eat it all. "Help," she screamed. "Nate, Grandpa, somebody help me." Nate came running from the living room. He saw me holding his wife's head down, saw the mess, and then his eyes met mine. I gave him a slow, deliberate wink. He stopped dead in his tracks, a look of horrified understanding on his face. He turned around and walked silently back into the living room. Then Arthur came hobbling in, his eyes wide with alarm. "What is all this commotion?" The moment Chloe saw him, I let her go. She scrambled over to him, a pathetic, weeping mess. "Grandpa, she tried to kill me. She's a monster." She shoved my face in boiling soup. "Look at me." Her face was a mess of noodles and tears. Her hair was dripping broth, and angry red welts were already starting to form on her skin. I, on the other hand, calmly walked to the sink and began to wash my hands, my expression one of weary sadness. Arthur looked at the scene, his gaze finally settling on me. "Hannah, what is the meaning of this?" I turned, wiping my hands on a towel. "I don't know what her problem is, Arthur. I came down for breakfast. The house is full of food, but she goes out of her way to tell me that she only made enough for the two of you. She said she would never cook for me, that I wasn't part of this family. She was taunting me, trying to start a fight. It got out of hand. I'm so sorry." There were 3 bowls on the counter. Chloe sobbed. "I made one for Nate." "Did you?" I asked. raising an eyebrow. I only saw two. Arthur turned to Chloe, his face a thundercloud. Is this true? After everything I have said, you are still treating my wife this way. You intentionally excluded her, but she burned me, Chloe wailed, pointing at her scalded face. From the looks of it, you deserved it, he roared. You have been nothing but a cruel, disrespectful brat from the moment she arrived. I've had enough of your dramatics. Now get out of my sight. Defeated and humiliated, Chloe ran from the room, sobbing. Arthur came over to me, his expression softening into one of concern. He took my hands in his. My dear, are you all right? I'm so sorry you have to put up with her. I'm fine, I whispered, leaning my head on his shoulder. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was something else entirely. I was a monster of my own creation, living in a house of fools, and I was having the time of my life. My victory made me careless. I had wealth, property, and a secret power over the men in the house. I began to indulge my vices with a new sense of impunity. The drinking became heavier, the one-night stands more frequent. I stopped caring if I stumbled home at 3 a.m. I stopped caring about the whispers and the sideways glances. I was untouchable. Then Arthur died. It happened on a damp, chilly autumn night. He woke up, complaining of thirst. The water pitcher by his bed was empty. I'd drunk it earlier and forgotten to refill it. I'll go down and get you some, he said, slowly swinging his legs out of bed. Be careful, Arthur, I mumbled, half asleep. Turn the light on for the stairs. I know, he grumbled and hobbled out of the room. I was just drifting back to sleep when I heard it. A single, sharp cry, followed by a series of sickening, wet thuds. I bolted upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. I ran out of the room. Arthur was lying at the bottom of the grand staircase in a twisted, unnatural heap. His head was bleeding profusely, a dark pool spreading rapidly on the pristine white marble. I screamed. Doors flew open. Nate and Chloe ran out, their faces pale with sleep. Chloe saw her grandfather, saw the blood, and her eyes rolled back in her head. She fainted on the spot. We rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. He had sustained a massive head trauma, and with his already fragile health, he never had a chance. Arthur Sterling was dead, and I was a widow. A very, very wealthy widow. Except there was a problem. Arthur had died unexpectedly, before he had a chance to formally update his will. His prenuptial agreement with me was ironclad. I was entitled to a significant portion of the estate. The properties he had already put in my name were mine, free and clear, but his liquid assets, a portfolio worth over $10 million, were now in a legal gray area. The family gathered a week after the funeral to discuss the division of the remaining assets. The atmosphere was thick with grief, suspicion, and naked greed. There were 5 of us at the table: myself, Tom, and his wife, Susan, and Chloe, and Nate. Chloe, emboldened by her father's presence and my new, slightly less powerful position as a mere widow, spoke up first. Dad, Mom, Hannah has already received so much. She has the house on Elm Street and the apartments on Maple. That's more than enough. Nate and I think the remaining properties and all of the cash assets should come to us and you. Susan nodded in agreement. She's right, Tom. We've worked for this family our entire lives. Hannah was here for less than a year. It's only fair. Tom, my secret ally, my puppet, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Now, let's be reasonable. Hannah was Dad's wife. She is legally entitled to a share, yes. Susan snapped. Not half. $10 million is not a share. It's a heist. This was my moment. I looked across the table, directly at Chloe, and my voice was quiet, almost conversational. Are we sure Arthur's fall was an accident? The table went silent. What are you talking about? Tom asked, his brow furrowed. It's just strange, I said, letting my gaze drift to Chloe. He'd gone up and down those stairs 1,000 times. But that night, the landing at the top of the stairs was slippery, almost like someone had spilled something oily. Chloe's face went completely white. Her secret, the pathetic little trap she had set for me, was suddenly a weapon in my hand. She had poured cooking oil on the landing, hoping I, in my drunken state, would slip and fall. She had meant to hurt me, but she had killed her own grandfather instead. Nate knew. I knew. And now she knew that I knew. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her eyes darting around the room. I think maybe we should call the police, I continued, my voice silky smooth. Have them investigate. A proper forensic analysis of the scene. I'm sure they can determine exactly what caused him to slip. No! Chloe shrieked, jumping to her feet. No police. It was an accident. Just a tragic accident. She looked at her father, her eyes wide with panic. Dad, please, don't listen to her. From that moment on, Chloe was broken. She agreed to everything. She would have signed over her own soul to keep me quiet. Tom, trapped by his own infidelity, was also on my side. Nate, a coward at heart, just wanted the whole thing to be over. That left only Susan. She fought me tooth and nail. I don't care what the rest of you say, she declared, her voice ringing with righteous fury. She is a manipulative, greedy snake, and I will not allow her to steal my children's inheritance. I'll see you in court, Hannah. I will hire the best lawyers in the state, and I will drag your name through the mud. By the time I'm done with you, you won't have a penny left. I just smiled at her. Are you sure you want to do that, Susan? Litigation can be so messy. You never know what secrets might come out in a deposition. I let my eyes flick over to her husband. A silent, unmistakable threat. The final agreement was drawn up. The $10 million was split down the middle. $5 million for Tom and Susan. $5 million for me. The remaining properties were divided between Chloe and Nate. The mansion went to Tom, the eldest son, as was tradition. My work was done. I packed my designer clothes, my expensive jewelry, and my check for $5 million. As I was loading the last of my boxes into my car, Susan came out to the driveway. She stood there, watching me, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold fury. You think you've won, don't you? She said, her voice flat. I know I have, I replied, not looking at her. You've torn this family apart. You've corrupted my husband and terrified my daughter. All for money. It was worth it, I said, slamming the trunk shut. I hired a private investigator, you know, she said quietly. I froze, my hand on the car door. A month ago, I knew something was wrong with Tom. He was distant, jumpy. I had to know what was going on. I thought he was just having a run-of-the-mill affair. She gave a short, bitter laugh. I wish it had been that simple. She held up her phone. The screen showed a picture. It was a grainy, long-lens shot, but the image was unmistakable. It was me and Tom, entering the penthouse suite of the hotel, his arm around my waist. The date and time were stamped in the corner. He sent me the full report this morning, Susan continued, her voice devoid of all emotion. Dozens of pictures, hotel receipts, everything. I know everything, Hannah. My blood ran cold. The game was over. I had overplayed my hand. So, what now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You're going to expose us, take me to court, ruin your husband. She shook her head slowly. No, that's what you would do. You'd burn the whole world down to get what you want. But I'm not you. I have a family to protect, a daughter who is already broken, a husband who is a weak, pathetic fool, but who is still my husband." She took a step closer, and for the first time, I saw the profound, bottomless grief in her eyes. "I'm not going to do anything," she said. "I'm just going to live with it, just like you are. You're going to take your money, and you're going to walk away from this house, and you will never, ever come back. And every time you look at your bank account, you'll know exactly how you got it. You'll know that you destroyed a family, that you caused the death of an old man, and that you sold every last piece of your soul for a number on a screen. That will be your punishment, living with yourself." She turned and walked back into the house without another word, leaving me standing alone in the driveway. I got in my car and drove. I drove back to my mother's small, shabby house in our poor, forgotten town. When she saw me, she just opened her arms, and I fell into them, sobbing like a child. I had won the war, but I had lost myself completely. I bought my mother a new house, a beautiful little cottage with a garden. I had millions of dollars in the bank. I never had to work another day in my life. I had everything I thought I wanted, and I was the most miserable person on earth. One day, I was driving home when I saw a familiar motorcycle parked in front of Liam's old house. My heart stopped. He was back. I got out of my car, my hands trembling. He was in the yard, tinkering with the bike, just like he used to. He looked up and saw me. The easy, hopeful smile I remembered was gone. In its place was a quiet, guarded watchfulness. "Hannah," he said, "you're back, just for a visit. My mom's not well." We stood there in an awkward silence, a chasm of unspoken things between us. "I heard about your husband," he said finally. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," I said. He was old. The words sounded hollow and cruel. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to tell him I was sorry, that I had made a terrible mistake, that I thought about him every day. But what was the point? The girl he had written that note to was gone. I had murdered her myself. "Well," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, "it was good to see you." He was dismissing me. The kindest boy I had ever known was turning his back on me. The pain of it was sharper than any slap, more burning than any hot soup. It was the pain of finality. I got back in my car and drove away. That night, Susan's words came back to me. "That will be your punishment, living with yourself." She was right. I had a lifetime of lonely days and haunted nights ahead of me. I had traded my soul for a fortune, and now I had to live with the terrible, empty weight of my riches. It was a prison far more luxurious than the one I had escaped, but a prison all the same, and I was its only inmate, serving a life sentence. Life settled into a quiet, colorless routine. I took care of my mother. I managed my finances. I existed. The fire in me, the ruthless ambition that had driven me to such desperate lengths, had been extinguished, leaving behind only cold, gray ash. Then, one evening, there was a knock on the door. It was Liam. He stood on my porch, looking awkward and uncertain. "Hey," he said, "your mom told me what happened." I knew he wasn't talking about Arthur. My mother, in a moment of worried confession, had told him everything, or at least the sanitized version, about the accident, the acid, about my face. 8 months had passed since that night. 8 months of hospitals, surgeries, and agonizing pain. Susan, it turned out, had not been content to let me live with my conscience alone. She had wanted a more tangible, more biblical form of revenge. An eye for an eye. She had hired thugs to follow me. One night, as I was walking home from the grocery store, they cornered me in a dark alley. They held me down, and one of them threw a chemical acid in my face. The world had exploded in a supernova of white-hot agony. Then, darkness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital burn unit. My face, my neck, my arms, they were all swathed in thick bandages. The doctors used words like extensive damage and multiple reconstructive surgeries. They told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky I hadn't been blinded. It didn't feel like luck. I never reported it to the police. What was the point? It was her final move in our twisted game of chess. Checkmate. She had taken the one thing I had left that held any real value. My beauty. The very weapon I had used to build my fortune. The irony was so cruel, so perfect. It was almost elegant. Now, standing in front of Liam, I felt the familiar shame wash over me. I wore a high-necked blouse to cover the scars on my chest, but there was no hiding my face. The right side was a patchwork of tight, discolored scar tissue. My eye pulled into a permanent, mournful slant. My mouth twisted into a lopsided grimace. I was a monster. You shouldn't be here, I mumbled, keeping my face angled away from him, towards the shadows of the hallway. Why not? He asked gently. Look at me, Liam. Just look at me. I am looking at you, he said. And when I dared to meet his gaze, I saw no horror, no pity, just a deep, profound sadness. I'm so sorry this happened to you, Hannah. After that night, he started coming around. At first, it was just for a few minutes. He'd bring my mother flowers from his garden, or help her with a leaky faucet. He never pushed. He never pried. He would just talk to me, his voice calm and steady, as if I were still the girl he used to know. He spoke of his travels, the jobs he'd worked, the places he'd seen. He treated me like a person, not a gargoyle. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to coax me out of my self-imposed prison. Let's go for a walk, he'd say. No, people will stare. Let them stare, he'd reply, his voice firm. I'm not ashamed to be seen with you. Are you ashamed to be seen with me? He was the only person who had ever seen the broken, ugly thing I had become both inside and out, and not run away. His quiet, unwavering acceptance was a balm on my wounded soul. The love I thought I had killed and buried all those years ago began to stir. A tiny, fragile green shoot pushing its way up through the rubble of my life. One evening, we were sitting on my mother's porch, watching the fireflies begin to dot the twilight. I don't deserve you, you know, I said quietly. He turned to me, his expression serious. You've made mistakes, Hannah. Terrible mistakes. You hurt a lot of people, and you hurt yourself most of all. But that person, the one who did all those things, she was forged in desperation and pain. She's not all of who you are. He reached out and took my hand. His touch was warm, solid, real. I still see the girl I fell in love with. The girl who worked 15-hour days to protect her mother. The girl who was strong enough to survive hell. Tears streamed from my good eye, tracing a path through the scarred landscape of my cheek. She's gone, Liam. No, she's not, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She's right here. She's just been hiding. A year later, we were married. It was a simple ceremony in my mother's garden, with only a handful of people present. I didn't wear a veil. For the first time, I didn't try to hide my face. As I stood there, holding Liam's hand, I looked out at the small group of faces and saw my mother, weeping tears of pure, unadulterated joy. I knew my journey was far from over. The ghosts of my past would likely walk with me forever. The face in the mirror would always be a reminder of the price of greed and the brutal cost of revenge. My fortune, the blood money I had acquired, was a heavy weight, and we decided together to give most of it away to charities, a burn victims foundation, a shelter for women, an addiction recovery center. It was a small, inadequate penance, But it was a start. My life was not a fairy tale. There was no magic kiss to restore my beauty. The scars, both visible and invisible, would always remain. But as I looked at the man standing beside me, the man who had seen the very worst of me and had chosen to love me anyway, I realized something profound. I had chased after wealth, power, and security, believing they were the keys to happiness. I had burned down my own world and the worlds of others to get them. But in the end, true salvation hadn't come from a $10 million bank account. It had come in the form of a quiet, decent man who was brave enough to love a monster, and in doing so, had taught the monster how to be human again. My punishment was to live with myself, but my redemption, I now knew, was that I no longer had to do it alone.